Hello everyone, Scott here again, and welcome back to the Guilty Pleasure Cinema, celebrating the movies you're embarrassed to love. I'm going to cut right to the chase here because the year of adventure continues, with the greatest adventurers of the greatest adventurer to ever adventure ever in the history of adventures ever. And that is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because this is the adventures of Baron Munchausen. So what is this movie? Well, this is the adventures of the fictional Baron Munchausen. The extraordinary adventures of Baron Munchausen. Now, this is not actually the adventures. This is a game of telling tales and playing roles devised and written by that esteemable nobleman, Baron Munchausen, in a new, greatly expanded, revised edition. Baron Munchausen is actually a story character from the 1700s. Thing is, he is based on a real person. See, the actual Baron Munchausen was in the Russian-Turkish War back then, in the Ottoman Empire era, and he told tall tales of his adventures during that time. And a person overheard some of them, wrote them down, really embellished them, even more than the Baron was, and we have a fictional character. That's what this is. The problem with that is the actual Baron didn't like this happening because, yeah, he was embellishing the stories in a kind of Beowulf way, like, it's 9, last time it was only 6. You know, just a little embellishment here and there, that's fine. But what was happening is it was incredibly tall tales that were ridiculous. And problem is it was with the kind of thing where people didn't know the difference between the real ones and the real ones. It's kind of things today. Someone will post on Facebook, did you know that today was Back to the Future Day? Up until October 21st of this year, I'd seen that post come up for years because people would post it and believe it. Oh, did you know it was this? And not differentiate fact from reality. That's what happened to the Baron back then. That happened. And it sullied his name as a nobleman. And he didn't like that. He liked being able to tell his stories, which were so well told that even though people kind of knew this crap, they still liked it. They still liked them and were entertained. I mean, to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that the Baron would do, I mean, if I can find the picture really quick here, there is a scene in the movie. Yeah, there's when he went to the moon. There's a scene in the movie. Yeah, there's one. There's many. Let's just get to it. The one best example is he's underwater and he grabs his ponytail and he pulls it and lifts himself up out of the water. Because if you were to do that with something, like so, if you take this and do this, it lifts. Okay? So that would work here. That's the logic. It's the lack of logic. That's the idea, right? Okay. Doesn't matter that it's his own head, because that's when you do this, that works. So when you do this, that works. You with me? That's the movie. That's what happens here. That's what goes on. And this is in the age of reason. If I don't acknowledge the error, it doesn't make it actually happen. See that? What the Baron would do is just not play by the rules. Rules make things no fun. There's no room for rules in his world. Because the real world has no room for things where you can just grab your own ponytail and pull yourself out of the water. Or grab onto a cannonball and go launching across the battlefield and then grab another one on the way back to come back while avoiding death. I mean, there's some crazy stuff, but really, what's far-fetched? I mean, look at the stuff that I've done in the past almost 4 years. I shot the actual John Carter episode on location in Barsoom. Became a real girl for the Princess Diaries episode. I know death. I also know an elder god that wears a tuxedo. And he's really little. I also made it to 95 episodes by only doing 90. I mean, think back. I did Underworld. Underworld was crazy. That was kind of the new format type of thing, everything going on. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I mean, that's a crazy one with the vampires and everything going on. Prince of Persia is a classic adventure that we had there. The Transporter is another great one. That's great action going on there. Hitman, kind of similar idea in what's going on with that. Fantastic Four, I mean, obviously there's both copies here that I showed before, and... Wait, there's Beowulf. That one That one's clear, but these ones are... Wait. Oh. So that's no. Well, I mean, there was those... My alarm system is still 6.7 from Virtuosity. I know what it was. Fort Fairlawn. I hadn't put it there yet. That's where it belongs. That's the only thing that's wrong about all that. 95. No matter. Back to everything else. Like I said, Sid's my alarm system. I was a girl. I had a real Predator that shot the footage for the first anniversary. Real Terminator on set as well. The Hall of Justice chipped in. All these things are real. So, what the main thing to talk about here now, though, is what is this movie? This movie is Terry Gilliam's follow-up to Time Bandits and Brazil. Now, he's also part of Monty Python. The animations are his. And he's a very particular auteur kind of guy. Very specific style. Very detailed. Very unique. And just imagine the idea that the guy who fought with studios over acclaimed movies like Brazil, who didn't understand it, and he's fighting with them to make a movie about the overly inflated, exaggerated adventures of an Ottoman-era guy talking about his tall tales with a 1980s special effects budget. Yeah! What is great, though, about that is that it actually takes the idea of a 30s serial adventure, in that he gets into a different adventure, something happens, and how's he going to get out of it? And it keeps one-upping itself and going through that. That's a classic thing that goes through a lot of stuff. You could probably argue that The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, the original book and story, like I said, this is not it, but that is actually the idea that this comes from, I would like to wager. Something the Baron does quite a bit. Now, the opening has him telling the story about why he and the Grand Turk are at war and what's going on, how it's his fault, how he can fix things. And what happens is he actually is telling an audience this at a play who's looking at his life. And he's like, no, here's how it really happened. And then the movie actually goes into that as if it's real. Is it? Maybe. Maybe not. That's the fun. What happens, though, is it gets interrupted by the actual war in time with the cannons firing and the thing. And we get to meet his team. And what really comes through here, though, is that little 9-year-old Sarah Pauly comes along and gets things back on track. And really, through that, saves him from the Grim Reaper. Not exactly Death's best look, but it was the 1700s, and this is a notorious guy to go after. I'll cut her some slack. So, what went wrong? Well, Columbia and Sony. See, Sony bought Columbia TriStar, and this was one of the movies that was made by the former head of that. And they were really trying to shelve or just kill off everything he was involved with. And this was one of them. They had no desire for it. They did an extremely limited release of it, and they didn't care. And yet it still found its audience. It still found its way out. It's got a freaking 20th anniversary edition DVD from Columbia. Yeah. Things weren't good. Couple that with the fact that it went almost double over budget. It's only supposed to be 25 and went to almost 40 or 50. Yeah, it doesn't quite work. So combine all of that with studio insanity about not wanting to release this movie that it has. And really, why wouldn't you do it? Only because it's got that dude's name on it. And really what you encounter is something that's relatively insane considering the subject matter. I mean, would you believe is really what this is, and in a far more way crazier than Get Smart. Now, the movie does have a lot of slow moments in it. Honestly, the adventures aren't really adventures per se. It's more just events. although they are expertly done and well shown and played out and everything, it's just really not why we're here. And yet, at the same time, the Baron, although he gets as distracted as his movie does, has 9-year-old Sarah Polly to help out and get things back on track by getting him back on track. Because all she wants to do is save the town. That's all this is. And he's got to get his team to do it. But he's got to go to the moon, and then a whale, and then go to a volcano, and meet a god, and... right? So he's got to do all these things to do all these things. And yet the whole thing is we just want him to save the town. That's kind of where it is. And he just gets sidetracked over and over and over. It's fun, but it's not why we're here. What is also fun about that, though, is that this 9-year-old kid is applying logic to things with rational thinking. There's a bit where she's climbing down with the Baron and Berthold from the moon because they tied rope around it and are lowering themselves down to Earth because the moon's curved, right? They tied around this end at a peak and are climbing down. And when they get down to this part, he runs out of rope. So the Baron says, use this, and drops it down. And he goes, where do you get this from? From the top. Where else would I get it? Okay. So he starts tying it on. And this is a quick little moment where Sarah just looks up, because she's in the middle, and the Baron's up top. Looks up, and then while he's tying it down there, the top of the rope falls. She broke it. The reason broke it. So, what's there to like about this movie? That's awesome. That little bit of acknowledging the fact that you can't really do this. But if you don't think that, sure you can. Right? That's the beauty of what this movie does. It's just let it go. No rules, who cares? Why apply rules? You can't do that. Pfft, never tell me the odds. Right? That's really it. That's the movie in a nutshell. That's how the Baron lives, and that's the world he wants. He doesn't like the age of reason. He doesn't want to be told you can't do this. Because then you can't. And there's a touching moment later in the movie where even Sarah says, I don't believe this. And the Baron goes, oh no, not you. Because that childhood wonder, that innocence inside, he saw it crumbling from the 9-year-old. That's awesome. Now with all of that, the guys to like are the guys. The Baron himself, John Neville. He is awesome. He got a resurgence, much like Bill Nighy from Underworld. But the man owns the role with such an amazing confidence, which is absolutely necessary, considering he's the one telling and living these tales. Like any good adventurer, though, he has awesome companions. Berthold is the world's fastest runner. Adolphus is a sniper with amazing eyesight. The best listener, Gustavus, also has super breath. And the incredibly strong Albrecht, who threw 3 ships. Sounds kind of like a super team, doesn't it? It really is. And these guys are brought to life with such amazing cast. I mean, Eric Idle's the obvious, famous one. But put that with the awesome special effects of the 80s. This is pre-CGI. We have Terry Gilliam's visual effects of practical and compositing all meshing together to get stuff you've never seen before. Harping on that, but it's really true. He even made an underwear balloon to fly to the moon to talk to the king, played by Robin Williams. This all while avoiding death at every turn. She must have really hated him, and probably not going to like that I keep mentioning that. Speaking of hate, he hates the world that it's become. There's no room for the fantastical, the adventure. It's full of reason and science and progress, as he says. And that gets in the way. That gets in the way of the awesome, silly stuff you can do. And really, sounds like a guilty pleasure to me. He just wants to be in a world where you can believe this stuff is good and real and happens. That's guilty pleasures. That's suspension of disbelief if I ever heard it. He literally loves them so much to the point that he gets younger on the moon because he's rejuvenated by the sense of adventure. He gets JFK'd at one point by a young Jonathan Pryce, who is the voice of reason, and things clearly go south, and Death finally got to go in there and get him. And he's mumbling, no doctors, no doctors, because doctors are science. Doctor will walk up there and be like, he's going to die from that wound, and it'll happen because it's real and it's reason, and oh, you can't fight that now. Think Last Action Hero. Last Action Hero is Baron Munchausen. First Action Hero. Well, aside from Beowulf. Sorry. I'm looking at some old stuff here. Now, do we abide by all that? Was it real? Was it not? I mean, the way the story weaves in and out, maybe, maybe not, maybe it is. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. But that is the adventures of Baron Munchausen. This is a huge, big epic in every sense of the word, told by a master storyteller, which could be taken in like 5 different ways here, but no expense was spared, and actually more expense than they had, because it nearly doubled its budget, but just fully embraces the madness and amazing visual effects, crazy fun cast, literally unbelievable adventures all throughout. The scope and scale is real, like Conan the Barbarian levels of real. It's a super big adventure, and it's tragic how people just don't know about the movie and how awesomely big it is. Couple that with the tall tales of the Baron's power being the suspension of disbelief, and you get a very intricate, detailed version of It's No Fun to Grow Up. Because at its core, it just wants to be fun, and that's what the Baron is all about. And that's what we're all about here at the GPC. So, really, with that in mind, next up, for episode 96, it's episode 2. No, not the Bloodsport one from 2012. Episode 2. It's December, and I'm reviewing something called Episode 2. It's not the full title, but it's in the title. You probably know what I'm talking about by now, and that's as specific as I'm going to get. So I hope you join me for that. And remember, you shouldn't feel guilty about it if it's a movie you love. Hello everyone, Scott here again, and welcome back to the Guilty Pleasure Cinema. Celebrating the movies you're embarrassed to love. Keep forgetting I took the other part of that line out. Actually, I'm forgetting that. Not exactly his death. What is also fun about that, though, that's awesome. My Xbox turned on when I said that. I don't know why it did, but it did. It must have thought I said Xbox on. Xbox, turn off. Yes. Thank you. The amazing listener Gustavus has a super... And this super strong...